The US empire will undoubtedly fall. This is unavoidable. You can see this with other countries, particularly in Europe, having an issue with debt. Debt accumulation is becoming a huge problem right now because the system operates exclusively off of debt. Let's go into this chart here. I'm not a big chart fan, as you know, but I do like to use it to solidify my theories. So if we take a look at this one here, you can see how the swings are getting tighter and tighter together all the way to the top where it hits the peak. Now this wouldn't be so much of an issue if the economy was just absolutely booming. However, we see that that is absolutely not the case. So this is a major concern of mine. I hope it is one of yours as well. This is a chart, you can take a look. It'll be in the description as always. I want to talk to you today about something I wrote in my book, and the Latin American crisis was basically massive amounts of government spending. It became a really big problem with extreme deficits and, of course, high inflation. And then I talked about 3 countries, Mexico, Brazil, and Argentina. But in the case of Mexico, you had a currency that was practically destroyed. But one thing I want to note is that perhaps they're devaluing, not just Mexico, but other countries around the world. Perhaps countries are devaluing so that they can pay back their debts in cheaper dollars. That is something that we really need to think about. And I believe China is doing this, and they're doing so very well. They intentionally print money to keep the value of their currency very low so that their exports are very attractive. Now, of course, there are many other factors here, but this could be something that you need to think about every time a country goes to print money. With new default looming, Argentina urges calm. They're saying everything is just fine. Have no fear. It's just a default. We've been through this many times before. Not to worry here. And this is a country that has faced already a 20% devaluation of their currency in January. We're talking about fueled inflation and prices up 15% in the first half of the year. That is something that the economy cannot support, the citizens can't support, and undoubtedly this will collapse them, because when individuals aren't buying anything, they're worried about their currency collapsing. They're going to hold on to other currencies, and they're going to take their money and basically spend it elsewhere, not in their own country. And if they do, they're going to be buying real assets if they can find them, and this is obviously going to be a big concern. And this is what we need to look at and use this as a crystal ball to determine what's going to happen in the United States, Canada, the UK, and so on. Huge, massive, if you look at the inflation numbers right here, they're concerned about 41%. There are other countries in the world right now, developing nations, which are facing this type of inflation rate. This is not unrealistic to assume. Let's go on. Sovereign debt crisis over, or a Greek tragedy. This is back in 2012, talking about the biggest sovereign default in history. And what I want to warn you is that, sure, Greece is small. They're really insignificant in terms of the total amount of the Eurozone. However, this marks the possibility that countries can default, that countries can fail. And when you own their bonds, you're basically taking a risk. Now, you may think, well, I don't own any Greece bonds. All the bonds I own are American or Canadian or whatever. The point is that all of these markets are interconnected. When Greece was having trouble, US markets were struggling, and that's the way it works. So you see this into the future, and you need to realize, look, we got a whole bunch of countries here that are on the verge of collapse. Of course, this is particularly in Europe, but when you look at the debt problem that many countries have, it's basically everywhere. So why would you hold your money in a system that's connected to this obvious frail and system like this in the financial sector? This is out of Forbes, basically. And what the point I want to make is that, this is talking about Greece, is that if your income is going down every year, then how are you going to repay? Isn't that a very important thing to note? Because if you look at statistically, the GDP of many nations is falling. Real value is going down. Sure, the stock market's going up, but that's just devalued dollars. And that's what's happening. You have countries printing all around the world, and this is no different than, look at Japan, for example. With the struggling economy, the only way they can get anything moving doing, or basically to stay flat, is to print trillions and trillions. And they've been doing this for decade over decade, and they're in for a real crisis in the future, undoubtedly. And that's something for another day. But basically the point is that the debt and the deficits are causing such a major problem, they can't pay it back, and they're going to be involved in a really this unfolding of the crisis that will take place very slowly, and it will be a methodical process that will collapse all of the dominoes. If you like this information, I hope that you'll give this video a thumbs up and that you will become an insider and a subscriber if you're not already. So to become an insider is totally free. It's all just good information sent out through email, and that is at themoneygps.com. You scroll down to the bottom and you fill in your email address, and you'll be hearing from me.